Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. SoupX, the Startup Expo, North America's premier startup conference, is March 6th and 7th, 2017, in sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Affordably priced, SoupX is a 2-day international conference featuring workshops, panels, speeches, a $50,000 startup competition, and over 100 exhibitors. For more information, go to sup-x.org. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Robert Delman. He's the managing director at Golden Seeds. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. You have quite an impressive background, and you're doing a lot of really interesting stuff. But maybe before we get into exactly what is Golden Seeds, maybe let's start off with kind of getting to know you a little bit better and mention where you grew up.
Sure. So I was born and raised on Long Island in New York, and really all throughout my adolescent career, I guess you could say, I worked at a family business and continued to work at that business after college, and eventually rose to become president. It was a manufacturing and distribution company in the commercial tableware industry, and I never really expected to end up doing angel or venture investing, and quite honestly, I never really even knew what it was.
Okay, so walk me through that journey. Like, you're working at this company. How did you kind of go into angel and investing?
Yeah, sure. So I guess you could say the best time for an entrepreneur to sell their company is when they're not trying to sell the company. So we were doing very well, acting very entrepreneurial, and we got an unsolicited offer from one of our competitors within the market, and it was a great offer, so we accepted. And I stayed on with that company for about 3 years. And then after that, sort of looking for my next career. And I came across an article one day in the Wall Street Journal that talked about angel investing. So I Googled it, made a few phone calls, got involved in a couple of local groups, and here I am today.
Sure. So maybe let's back up a little bit. What made you kind of like this company acquires you, you had to work there for a number of years. What made you kind of stay on? Was it contractual, or you kind of wanted to still work there, or what made you stay on for 3 years?
So I was very fortunate in that none of the acquisition was based upon any type of earnout.
Okay.
So I could have really gone at any time, but it was a great package. And it was a great opportunity to really guide the company through the transition. So, I really loved what I was doing, so I stayed on. But then after the 3 years, I decided it was time to move on and do something else.
Sure. So you called around, you decided to kind of start being an angel investor. What made you decide to kind of start doing that? Like you mentioned the article, but what was your kind of first deal, and what was the real deciding factor where you're like, I really want to kind of start doing some angel investing?
So when you have a positive exit, all of a sudden your phone starts ringing with lots of people offering for you to be an investor in the next sort of great thing.
Got you.
And being new to that, you would meet someone, at a Starbucks for an hour, and you were ready to write the check after that first meeting. It's very easy to buy into an entrepreneur's passion about their business. So as you can imagine, there's not a lot of due diligence associated with that type of investing. So unfortunately, I did make a few investments very early on, just sort of based on the passion of the entrepreneur and without doing any due diligence. And as I mentioned, those unfortunately were not successful. So I then started looking around for some sort of angel group.
Okay.
Where you could pool the resources, both the deal sourcing and the due diligence process, and get a lot of smart people around the table asking questions that you would never even think of asking. So that's really how I sort of developed from becoming an angel investor into becoming part of a group. And part of my overall strategy of becoming an angel investor was, first off, I wanted to allocate part of of my assets into a high reward asset class. As we know, angel investing can be very lucrative, but it's also extremely risky. So I only have a small percentage of my assets in there. And also, I felt that I was extremely lucky in my exit, and I wanted to continue to interface with entrepreneurs and pass on some of the knowledge that I had gained over my journey.
Sure. So how did you get involved with Golden Seeds, and exactly what is Golden Seeds?
So the way I got involved was I had met through another group that I was active with, a chocolate company that I invested in, and it was a female entrepreneur, and at that time they were also going through due diligence at Golden Seeds. So I was introduced to them as an investor in this company as part of the company's fundraising process. And at that time, Golden Seeds was only about 2 or 3 years old, and they were an angel investor network of angels, both men and women, who would invest in companies, startup companies. But the one twist is that there had to be at least one female in the C-level suite with a meaningful position of equity, influence, and ownership.
Okay, interesting. So you got introduced to them. At what point did you decide to kind of come on board and be managing director?
Right. So early on, in the process of sort of seeing how they go about their process, I was really hooked. One thing that really struck me was the intelligence of the people sitting around the table and their attention to the process, and really having a very defined process as far as how they did things, whether it was from deal sourcing, due diligence, leading a deal. And I really became hooked. And I was one of sort of the early managing directors at Golden Seeds. And, as I mentioned, I've now been here almost 10 years.
Wow.
And I cover certain areas like New York deal flow. We have a knowledge institute where we educate new angel investors about angel investing in the process. So I'm one of the lead instructors there. And we also run a lot of office hours programs where we see early stage entrepreneurs either online or they come in, and we have a whole program set up for that.
Okay. No, that's really cool. So you kind of mentioned your guys' process. Do you want to maybe walk me through kind of what exactly do you guys kind of do from the initial kind of meeting to actually investing? Can you walk me through that process?
Yes, absolutely. So we use an online platform called Procedure. So we receive applications in and we review them on an ongoing basis. We also, as I mentioned, have other opportunities where we can engage with entrepreneurs like office hours. Those are informal. But once a company gets sourced, and there are various ways in which companies will find out about us, either through the ecosystem in general. We have 275 members who are always out there looking for deal sourcing. So once those deals come in, we take a look at them on an individual basis. We spend a lot of time going over them. We look at the financials, we look at the market, and we determine whether we think that this is something that our members would be interested in. Because at the end of the day, it's the members who make the individual decisions whether to invest or not. If we think that it would have interest to the members, the next step in our process is we invite the company in for a screening, and we do hold those monthly. And we usually see anywhere between 10 and 15 companies on a monthly basis.
Wow.
Here in New York. We also see companies in other locations as well. And screening is open to all the members. The company gets 10 minutes to pitch. At the end of that day, we take a vote among the members to sort of find out who the top 2 or 3 were that there is interest. We then invite those companies back 2 weeks later. We have what we call our forum, and we typically get about 50 to 75 investors at that event. And the company also gets 10 minutes to pitch, and then there's plenty of time for Q&A afterwards. After that, if we still have some sizable interest among members, we ask the hypothetical question, knowing what you know now, would you invest in this company? That's not a hard commitment. It's just sort of getting a level of interest.
Sure.
And if there's a sizable amount of members to move forward, we then go into the due diligence process. And throughout all of these phases, we do have what we call a due diligence playbook, where we follow along a certain process. So we then form a due diligence team, and that is made up of the members themselves. And we go through a host of issues around the management team, around the business model, around the intellectual property. And then we garner interest from the members along the way. We write a deal memo, and then hopefully that will garner some investment from our members at the end of the day. And generally speaking, our funding rate is about 3% of companies that apply will get funding from Golden Seeds. And that is pretty much the average that's published by the Angel Capital Association, which is really the trade organization for angel groups throughout the U.S.
Got you. So is roughly what's the time frame from kind of a company applying, you guys interviewing, going through your process, and then deciding to kind of invest in them? Is that a couple of months? Is it 6 months? Does it really depend on kind of how much money they're looking for, or how does that work?
So, of course, the answer is that it depends, and it
Sure.
depends on how much due diligence we actually need to do. It also depends on whether we are leading the deal or we're following along with someone else's term sheet. If we're leading the deal and are negotiating the term sheet, that can often take longer. But we really like to get to know the entrepreneur because at the end of the day, the business idea is certainly going to change, but the entrepreneur is who the entrepreneur is. So we really want to spend time with them, understand how they operate and how they think. But I would say, generally speaking, our process takes on an average about 12 to 15 weeks.
Okay. Well, that's not that bad, actually. That's pretty quick.
It could be quicker, it could be longer,
Sure.
It all depends.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So what do you guys kind of look for when somebody comes to you? Is there certain industries that you guys prefer? Is there certain things you're looking for? Obviously, you said kind of a little bit more kind of obviously women leaders, or they have to be kind of high up in a company. But what do you guys kind of look for in companies coming to Golden Seeds?
Right. So, as I mentioned earlier, the management team themselves and the people are really, really important to us. We certainly, look at a variety of factors. We want to know what the entrepreneur has accomplished so far with the business. We're not necessarily concerned about where the entrepreneur went to school, or something like that.
Interesting.
We're looking for what can they show us as far as accomplishments that they've made so far. As far as the business itself, of course, we want something that's going to be extremely scalable. We're not interested in things that have a strong real estate component or require a lot of capital expenditures, like building a factory or something along those lines.
Got you.
We love companies that already have some type of proof of concept revenue. So if they're giving the product away now and they haven't yet started charging, that's okay. But if they do have some proof of concept revenue to prove that people are willing to actually pay for it, that's better. We want the product, if it's some sort of tech product, to be out in beta, so they have hundreds, if not thousands, of people using it, and they're getting a lot of valuable input back from those people. As far as revenue goes, we love if there's revenue from multiple sources, not just one. So whether it's in advertising, they're selling product, partnerships, things along those lines. Recurring revenue models are obviously terrific. We want to get an idea what the entrepreneur is thinking about as far as customer acquisition cost and what's the lifetime value of that particular customer. And then, of course, we want to know how we're going to exit. So we've invested in the company. What is the entrepreneur thinking insofar as exit opportunities? Who might be a potential acquirer for the company? Have there been similar exits in the space? What are the comps? And that really goes also along with fundraising. So, of course, valuation is certainly very important. What percentage of the company are we going to be buying? And also, we understand that all companies are going to need additional fundraising in the future. So let us know what those future capital requirements are going to be, or at least some idea. We realize that everything is an estimate at this point.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. So is there specific kind of verticals or industries that you guys prefer over others, or are you guys pretty open? Other than the few that you said you're not really into.
Right. So I would say we are pretty open. First off, we are location agnostic. So we're located in New York, but we do invest throughout the United States. As far as verticals go, sort of technology is an all-encompassing term, but certainly any types of technology we're interested in. We are also very large healthcare and life science investors.
Got you.
So whether it's some sort of drug therapy or medical device, something along those lines. We also do, because we're in New York, we see a lot of consumer, we see a lot of media. So those are verticals that we invest in as well.
Got you. And you guys have quite the amount of companies. Like, you guys have invested over 85 companies now. You've been around since 2005. You've put in over $90 million. You guys have over 275 members. So you guys are a huge angel network in kind of North America and probably even the world, right? That's a huge amount of people that are investing. And so we kind of talked about what the entrepreneur and what you guys do for companies, but you guys also kind of have obviously this huge network of angel investors. So how do you guys decide, if I'm an angel investor and I come to you and I say, I'm looking at kind of joining Golden Seeds as an investor, what do I need to do, or how do I become an investor through Golden Seeds?
Well, the first thing is we want to make sure that you are an accredited investor. Certain regulations set forth by the SEC. Everyone that's a member of Golden Seeds is an accredited investor.
Okay, sorry, just
and then
cut
we
you
would
off
encourage
there.
you.
What
Yes.
does that mean for people that maybe don't know, like that are maybe looking into getting to angel invested? What does that mean to be an accredited investor?
So there are certain either net assets that you have, or it could also be a certain amount that you earn each year.
Okay.
It's to somehow prove that you have a certain level of sophistication, which doesn't necessarily mean because you have a lot of money or earn a lot of money. It doesn't necessarily mean that that you know about angel investing. So, but anyway, those are just some of the guidelines set forth by the SEC. And if an entrepreneur takes money from a non-accredited investor, they are allowed to do that, but only up to a certain number.
Gotcha.
There are a lot of new regulations set forth by the Jobs Act. So we always encourage entrepreneurs to consult with their legal counsel, and there are also a lot of free resources online to learn about the Jobs Act, to learn about if they can accept and how many non-accredited investors they're allowed to have.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So I come to you, you guys do some obviously diligence on the actual investor. You make sure they're accredited. And then you kind of mentioned earlier that you do some sort of training. Like, if I came to you and I had money to invest as an angel, you give me some sort of training, or how does that kind of work to get me involved in actually being an active investor through your platform?
Right. So the first thing is we would certainly encourage you before you actually commit to come to one of our forum events as a guest.
Okay.
To see if this is the kind of thing that you're interested in. We really want our members to be active in both investing and working on due diligence teams. So it's a very collaborative effort here at Golden Seeds. Once you would actually join, we have 4 different modules of angel investing that you are able to take. Those are available as part of our initiation fee for free. You can sort of take as many of the classes you want in the first year that you're a member. And our actually first class, which is Angel Investing 101 Introduction, that is actually available to non-members as well. So they can learn about angel investing if they want to without making the commitment to actually join. The training is not necessarily mandatory, but it's highly suggested so that when we talk about things such as deal terms, valuations, what we look for in due diligence, our entire process, what happens after the investment, we cover all of that in the training modules.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. So, and this is probably really depends on the deal, but what's kind of the range of funding that you guys will give a company? Is it, 500,000, a couple million? What's your kind of rough range on average that you guys kind of invest in a company?
So we see a lot of companies that do not make it through to the end of our process,
Okay.
all the way through to due diligence and funding. However, there might be some members along the way who are just really drawn to the company and they want to invest. So we encourage that.
Oh,
So it
interesting.
could be just one or two investors going in, maybe $25,000 or $50,000. If a deal goes all the way through our process, we'll usually, depending on the level of interest, it could be anywhere between $250,000 and $1 million. We
Okay.
also have our Golden Seeds Fund 2, which is nearing the end of its investment process. But if the fund invests as well, that could be another $300,000 to $500,000.
Got you. Okay. So you guys also have this office hours thing, and for people that don't know kind of what that really means, what is that for the entrepreneur? Like, you guys kind of have investors that anybody can kind of come online and talk to, or walk me through that office hours thing, because I think it's super valuable, and I love when organizations do that and offer that as a service to entrepreneurs.
Sure. So office hours, first off, is free. There's no cost, there's no charge or anything like that. Um, so we encourage all entrepreneurs to check it out. And we also like to see entrepreneurs that are not necessarily in a business that may be fundable by an angel investor. We actually see people that are opening up some sort of corner store, some sort of retail establishment, and they just want to sort of learn about the process, that if they want to really expand their business. But basically, our office hours consists of two components. There's a little bit of a 30-minute presentation where we talk about Golden Seeds in general, who we are, what kind of companies we look for, and then we talk a lot about angel investing, what an angel investor sort of looks like. We talk a little bit about the accreditation process that we spoke about earlier. And then after that, there's also time for questions and answers by the attendees. And then if it's an in-person office hours in one of our locations, the entrepreneurs on an individual basis get to meet with one or two Golden Seeds members to just talk on an informal basis. It's not a real pitch. It's just to get some feedback on their idea and to ask some additional questions. If after the office hours, the entrepreneur feels like they're ready to apply, they can go online and enter our process on a more formal basis.
Got you.
We also have virtual office hours where if there's an entrepreneur not in one of our locations, they can sign on during specified hours. They'll hear the presentation and see the presentation. There'll be time for questions and answers. But unfortunately, there's not that one-on-one that occurs afterwards.
Got you. And just for people listening, you have physical office hours in New York, Boston, Silicon Valley, Dallas, Atlanta, and then, like you mentioned, your virtual office hours. So how long roughly does an entrepreneur get, whether they're coming in person or if they're virtual?
So if they're coming in person, there's that 30-minute presentation,
Okay.
and then they'll typically get about 15 minutes
Okay.
with one or two Golden Seeds members on an individual basis to obtain that one-on-one feedback.
Sure. No, that's great. I love that you guys kind of have both, like, physical places and virtual office hours. I think that's great. So I'm kind of curious. Obviously, you've been in this game a long, long time. What advice do you kind of give people that are looking to raise some angel money when they first kind of come, maybe at the beginning, or kind of what advice do you give somebody when they're kind of looking to raise some angel money?
So one thing that we also do with entrepreneurs is we really encourage them as they're thinking about funding and really growing their business. There are a lot of great, whether you want to call them accelerators or incubators around the country.
Sure.
And we don't necessarily recommend any of them in particular, but we find that for the most part, they do a great job of getting with these very early stage entrepreneurs, helping them hone their business idea, connecting them with mentors, and preparing them for the angel round. So we always encourage them to take a look there. There are obviously a lot of great resources online. There's a lot of great books out there. Certainly go to as many events as you can. A lot of attorneys hold events. A lot of angel groups hold events. Engage and network with as many investors, and other entrepreneurs as well as you can.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm kind of curious to know, is there anything that, you see kind of all the time that maybe people looking to raise money shouldn't do?
So very often we see a lot of pitches where after the first 5 minutes or so, we have no idea what the company actually does.
Okay.
Because there's often a lot of buzzwords that they use, or they're describing it in such esoteric terms. So I always talk about that an entrepreneur has to pass the granny test. If you want to get me interested in your idea, you have to pitch it the same way that your grandmother would understand it. So, we want you to speak in simple terms that anyone can really understand. Because if you lose me after 5 minutes, we see lots of deals. We have lots of applications. We're probably not going to be interested.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious to know your thoughts on kind of the pitch deck, because for a company that I'm working on right now, we were putting together a pitch deck, and it's interesting because at least what worked for us was we had a couple different versions of the pitch deck. One that was more kind of numbers and kind of data heavy, and then one that was a little bit more kind of, I wouldn't say salesy, but maybe a little bit more like fluffy kind of content, maybe a little bit more salesy, and it almost like you needed to send a pitch deck that would resonate with the type of person that you were actually kind of pitching to. Do you agree with that? Have you found that or what's your thoughts on kind of the pitch deck?
So we give to most of the entrepreneurs who come in a sort of 10-question template of what we like to see,
Gotcha.
In a pitch deck. It doesn't necessarily have to be 10 pages, but we want these 10 points covered. And they're very basic things such as, what is the problem that you're solving? What is your solution? What's the competition like? How big is the market? How are you going to make money and acquire customers? How are you going to exit? So all things associated like that. And I always tell entrepreneurs, first off, practice your pitch deck, because when you come in and have a 10-minute presentation in person, you want to be able to get through it all. And it's amazing how many people have not practiced enough and they just run out of time. I would also I always encourage entrepreneurs, feel free in the appendix section to have more of that hard data that you spoke about. So that during the Q&A portion, you can then go and refer to it. So the pitch deck could be 30 or 40 pages with maybe only 10 or 15 pages in the main section.
Gotcha.
So once again, don't wait for too long in the pitch deck to get to what is your product and how are you going to make money. In a pitch presentation, those are the two things that an investor is going to want to know within the first 30 seconds.
Sure. That makes sense. So are you expected, when people come to pitch to you, you give them 10 minutes, are you expecting them to fill the full 10 minutes? Or are they expected to kind of do it leave some questions, I guess, is in that 10 minutes, or they're kind of expected to fill 10 minutes?
So we've never seen a presentation that ends well before the 10 minutes.
Got you.
Everyone is usually able to fill that space. And then there's always a Q&A portion at the end, where there are going to be questions, certainly. But I would say the vast majority of entrepreneurs that are out there, they've done this before insofar as pitching. When you come to Golden Seeds, and I think most angel groups, it will be uninterrupted. I've been to presentations elsewhere where people start asking questions during the presentation, and it can be very distracting for the entrepreneur, and then they're not able to get through the entire presentation. So, but that usually doesn't happen, but an entrepreneur should know that it is a possibility.
Sure. So other than kind of a pitch deck, and you guys kind of provide these materials and questions to entrepreneurs, Is there anything else that either you guys are looking for or advice that you can kind of give other entrepreneurs to actually give to investors? Like, do you want like a business plan? Like, what other kind of documents or things do you really look for or tell people that they should kind of provide or at least have for reference if an investor asks and they don't have to scramble to kind of put something together?
Right. So there's a lot of great due diligence checklists out there. So entrepreneurs should always be aware of what's on a due diligence checklist. So even things like references, have those references lined up already. They should have all of this already up in a Dropbox or some sort of cloud platform where you can easily share it with potential investors. So you should always be thinking about that and always have it ready. Just some other things, that I sort of want to mention.
Sure.
There are two in particular that I think entrepreneurs should always be aware of. But very early on in the fundraising process, they may take some money in from friends and family where it's not really documented properly as far as what that money is. Is it a loan? Is it equity? So if the cap table is not sort of proper and if everything is not documented, that can create problems later on for an entrepreneur. So if any of the listeners out there, just make sure any money you take in is documented and everyone knows what the money is for and what the terms are. The second thing is when an entrepreneur comes in, if they already have a board of advisors, which is different than a board of directors. A board of advisors, it's a non-fiduciary role. There's no legal obligation. There are no board meetings. But it's basically people with sector expertise that are willing to help you, mentor you, and lend their name and expertise to your venture. So that provides a lot of credibility for what you're doing and really goes a long way during the fundraising process.
Okay. No, that's great. That's great advice, actually. I think that makes a lot of sense. So you obviously sit and you've been like an advisor and a board member and kind of a teacher yourself. What should companies that are looking to get a board or start a board, and you kind of covered this, like with obviously you want people with industry expertise, but what should you also look for when putting together a board or asking people to be on your board?
So usually a board is comprised of the founder themselves and then various investors from different series of investments.
Okay.
And then you should always have an independent on the board, as I mentioned, someone with sector expertise.
Okay.
One thing that the entrepreneur does not always realize is that the board members, they are there to obviously help the entrepreneur and to help the business. But at the end of the day, the fiduciary responsibility for board members is to all classes of shareholders. So the board members are not necessarily there, and I'm speaking about the board of directors now, not a board of advisors. So a board of directors, they're not there to be friends with the entrepreneur. They're not there to be buddies with the entrepreneurs. They're there looking out for all classes of shareholders. And very often that could be at odds with the founder themselves.
Interesting.
So just as long as all expectations are known and acknowledged by all members, it can be a successful relationship as long as everyone understands exactly what a board of directors member means.
Got you. No, I think that's really good advice. So we're kind of coming to the end of the show. So maybe let's close the show with maybe giving kind of a quick overview again of what Golden Seeds is and maybe what you guys are kind of looking for, just in case somebody kind of tuned in a little bit later into the show.
Sure. Thanks so much. So Golden Seeds is a angel investor network. We are made up of approximately 275 members, both male and female. We invest in early stage ventures throughout the U.S. And our basic criteria is that we only invest in companies that have a woman in a C-level role with meaningful influence, equity, and ownership in the business. We believe in gender diversity for providing better financial results for the company and for the shareholders. We are based in New York, but we also have locations throughout the country. We have an online platform You can apply to us via Proseeder or directly through our Golden Seeds website. We invest in a variety of sectors. Technology obviously is very broad, as well as healthcare, life science, consumer, and media.
That's great, Robert. So where can people kind of find you guys online and get more information about Golden Seeds?
Sure. So you can hop over to goldenseeds.com, and through there you can learn more about us. You can find out about our office hour sessions. We talk about our investment criteria, and you can actually apply for funding directly through the website.
Perfect. Well, Robert, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you. And, thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Great. My pleasure, Kevin. Thanks so much.
Great, man. Well, you have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. Thanks for listening. The music for the show was done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.